Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's episode of Intuitive Angling. And man, I really appreciate you guys swinging by the channel to check the video out and spend some time with me. Always very grateful for that. And guys, today we've got some advanced tips for fishing a swim jig because in my opinion, June is probably the best month of the year to fish a swim jig. You know, late May and pretty much into June, really good time to fish it. And swim jigs get talked about a lot on YouTube videos, but I'm going to give you guys some specific stuff that you probably haven't heard before in terms of how to work a swim jig and how to generate strikes by manipulating it, along with some other foundational approaches on it. Because if you've never fished a swim jig before, it is a unique presentation. It's a unique technique that requires certain things take place in order to generate the strike. So we're going to give you guys some good tips and advice on that today. And also guys, I will link everything in the description of my video and my Tackle Warehouse link for all the swim jig stuff. And also they've got a summer kickoff sale at Tackle Warehouse going on right now for the summer. A lot of good deals on it. So I'll have everything linked in the description of the video. If you guys would like to use that link, I'll put it in there. That'd be much appreciated. Okay guys, I don't want to spend a lot of time on the jig specifically because we've talked about this a lot in other videos. What I wanted to do in today's video, I want to talk more about how to generate action on a swim jig, but I will talk a little bit about it. Here's my favorite swim jig, guys. This is that megabass Uzo swimmer. If you guys are looking for a good swim jig, you won't find a better one. It's got a super good 4/0 nano coated hook on it, a nice thin weed guard that doesn't impede the hook set. It's got the fish head, the patented unique fish head design megabass makes that allows it to run and tracks, completely true in the water. It's got a keeper on this thing. I've got the Z-Crawl worm on there now, but it's got a keeper on there. You can't hardly pull this thing off. You almost have to cut it off with scissors. And it also comes with a little blade for an added attractor there. Sometimes I'll cut that off, sometimes I'll leave it on, it just depends. And this is my favorite trailer, guys. This is the Zoom Z-Crawl worm. A lot of people don't fish this as a swim jig trailer, but it really gives the bait a lot of action. One of my favorite setups for it. Now, color, let's talk specifically about color. There's 3 different colors I like to use in June. The shad pattern works pretty good if you got some fairly off-colored water, like water visibility of less than 1.5 feet or so. If I have water visibility of like 1.5 feet to 3 feet, I'll use some type of a green pumpkin, try to make it look like a bluegill, but green pumpkin, chartreuse, or orange or something like that. And if I have a real low light day, like it's cloudy, rainy, and a little bit off-colored water, then I'll switch to some type of a black and blue color here. It works pretty good, but I try to keep it basic on that. And the size, this is a 1/2 ounce here. I like the 1/2 ounce because I can cover a lot of water, but if I'm fishing really shallow water or I want to slow it down, sometimes I'll go to a 3/16 or a 3/8 ounce model. So it's all situationally depends on that. Okay, let's talk about the important thing on here. What I wanted to talk about is how to generate the action on your swim jig, because on a swim jig, you don't just swim it. It's not like a swim bait where you just throw the thing across the water and reel it in. You need to generate action by pumping it and how you work the bait. So this is what you need to do. First of all, you got to have the right rod and reel setup. You need a fairly stiff rod. I got the Megabass Perfect Pitch right here. It's a 7'2". I consider it like a medium heavy. I really like the 7'2" size because the 7'2" will allow you to cast the bait and pitch it and flip it both, so you can sort of do a little bit. But the main thing is when you work it, guys, is make your cast out there. And usually you're casting your swim jig around some type of an object or some type of bank cover. It could be grass, wood, docks, or anything like that. And when you cast it out there, as soon as it hits the water, you want to start working it. One of the most important aspects, in my opinion, on a swim jig is to keep it in sight as much as possible. Now, you don't have to have it in sight through the whole cast, because sometimes the way the sun is coming down or a little ripple in the water, something like that, you lose sight of it. But you need to keep the swim jig within sight most all the time. And I prefer to keep it within 1 inch or 2 of the surface, because they will hit that thing harder if they have to come up on it. There's just something about it. If you drop that swim jig down in the water column, unless you're fishing like some type of thick aquatic vegetation, you're not going to get many bites on it. You need to keep it and fish it almost like a top water. So throw it out there. As soon as it hits the water, just start shaking it like this and reeling it at the same time. I do it the whole time. I just shake the rod tip, reel it as I'm coming through there, reel it just fast enough to keep it in sight. Sometimes if it drops out of sight, or if I let it drop out of sight, I'll bring it up fast again and try to get it. Sometimes I'll even pop it up where it breaks the surface. It just depends on what I'm doing, but always shaking it like that. So this thing with the Z-Crawl worm on here, since you've got a little bit of a flex here, the thing comes through the water, sort of, you know, just going through the water like that, a lot more active. And this is what generates a strike rather than just a uniform type of a situation like that. And you're gonna find out most of the time that on a swim jig, the strike zone on a swim jig is pretty small. You're not, say for example, if you throw it out there next to a lay down log or something out there, once you get past that lay down log, it's not like you're gonna catch many fish as the thing's coming back to the boat. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll throw it up to the bank, and if it's a bare bank and I think the fish are shallow, I'll work it for 4 or 5 feet and then I'll reel it in fast to make another presentation. Or I'll fish it around any cover, come around the edges and the outside corners of it. As soon as it gets past there 4 or 5 feet away, I'll reel it in and make another cast just to make the maximum number of casts with it. Now, another thing with that is sometimes that I have found out in the month of June, this is another little technique. I like to do what I call floating a swim jig. Now, floating a swim jig is when you go real light. You go like a 3/16 of an ounce head. And if you don't have a swim jig that comes in a light 3/16 ounce, here's a little 3/16 ounce here. You can take and you can file your swim jig head down. But what I like to do sometimes in June, especially if the water is really dirty, like a foot, 12 inches of visibility, and I have a lot of shallow cover like grass or wood or rock, I'll take a little 3/16 ounce, put a fairly large trailer on it, and you don't have to reel it very fast at all. You can just sort of shake it and reel it like that, and it's so light that it'll stay up and you can work it a lot slower. That's one of the things that you have to figure out with a swim jig is the pace and the speed that swim jig needs to come through the water, because it all depends on what you're fishing. In general, what you're gonna find is the dirtier the water and the shallower the cover, the slower that you need to work the swim jig. Because if you're in that dirty, shallow water and you're fishing it on the edge of an object like a rock or grass bed or lily pad or a piece of wood or something like that, it gives that fish time to find that bait, because a swim jig is a quiet lure. It doesn't displace a lot of water. So from that standpoint, fishing it slow in that dirty water is critical. And if you're fishing it in a little bit cleaner water, say your water visibility is almost too clear for a swim jig, which once you get into about 3 foot clarity, that's sort of on the edge of being too clear. That's when you need to speed it up. So in that clearer water, I'll take the swim jig, I'll throw it out there, and I'll really start working it fast like that. Just keeping it really coming through the top of the water column fast. And that will generate a strike from a swim jig that you'll never generate if you reel it too slow. And one final thing, there's a lot of other stuff we could talk about swim jigs, but this is just sort of give you guys some good basic foundation. Another thing about a swim jig, two things I want to leave with you guys. Don't use braided line. You hear a lot of people fish braided line on a swim jig. Don't do it. You don't need it. Fish fluorocarbon line. Most of the time I'm using 17 to 25 pound test Seagarn Vizex line. And when the fish hits a swim jig, you have got to let that fish eat it. And I know it's hard, because when you throw that thing out there and you're shaking like this and you see one boil on it like that, like a topwater, a lot of times you're like a live nerve and you just want to set the hook on it. Anticipate the strike. So you throw out there, just working it, boom, once it boils on it, let the fish have it. Let it swim, let it move with it 3 or 4 feet, and then set the hook on it. If you don't, you're going to lose a lot of fish with that. But that's another thing about it, is just think of a swim jig as a jig. Don't think of it as far as terms of setting the hook and the equipment that you use is anything different. It's just a jig that you're swimming through the water column. But anyway, guys, it is a fun way to catch them. Swim jigs, one of my funnest lures that I have ever fished. The strikes are usually always exciting. It's a good way to catch quality fish. And if you've never tried it, just use some of those tips I gave you today and try it during the month of June, because that is the best time of year. So hope it helps out. We'll talk later.